offline with stakeholders on the issues. Opportunity to compromise, recognizing that, we're looking at two very, concerning issues. One is preserving pedestrian safety, and the other is managing the efficient flow of vehicular traffic. So there's certainly plenty to discuss, some very impassioned opinions. So we're hopeful that we can kind of have a very constructive discussion this evening. So just to sort of keep the program moving, we have the segment for public comments scheduled prior to the two items for discussion. So what I'd like to do is, we don't have an official timing, but we do like to keep the remarks within 2 minutes. So since we're a small group, hopeful that we can just apply the. I'll begin to call up those who have signed up to make public comments, and if you don't mind, please, keep your comments concise. So, first presenter, Hila Bechter. The floor is yours. Wherever you like. That's fine.
I wrote whatever I want to say. Becker, and I'm a president of Seagate Court Homeowners Association. Seagate Court is a community located off Father Capadano between Doti and Linda. It's a community, our street has only one exit/entrance from Father Capadana southbound. There is no way to exit, it's closed by like circle. And I'm here on behalf of about 200 people that are members of our community. Our community exists 25 years plus. Majority of the people, older people that are using ambulance, access ride, Ubers that need easy access. Recently, a no U-turn sign was installed on northbound Father Capadano just after the right-hand Kudruri. It's a gray house, whoever knows South Beach. This change is made very difficult for our residents to return home when they drive northbound.
Could you give the location again, ma'am? What location again? Is it Drury?
You know when you drive, if you know Father Capadano,
Yeah,
before
okay,
you get
we have.
there is like triangle.
Yes, we have.
So there is previously there was no sign. So we made a left, U-turn, and enter the community. Now we are forced to continue driving until Ocean Avenue light, make a left, drive all the way up to McLean Avenue, make a right, now, it depends on the traffic in the rush hour. And
John, it's Mark. We've lost the audio from you.
remove the sign because it's dangerous, I think, because
Back.
most people will not make the circle when we need to explain to ambulance how to get us. We cannot just say off Capadana, we can do it in Linda. If they are coming from different directions on the island, they will not know how to enter. In GPS, this route doesn't appear. So please help us to restore safety and easier way for our residents.
Okay. I think there's a study underway. We already have that. We're looking at it.
Thank you. I'd like to call up Vincent D'Angelo.
Yeah,
You're up.
yeah, just trying to bring to the attention of your community, Ward 2, and thank you for hearing me. My name is Vincent D'Angelo. We have a problem on Laconia Avenue, right next to the hospital, between Delaware and Benton Avenue. The high traffic and volume since the hospital has grown, and since the psychiatric center has grown, the infrastructure has not grown. We need Mason Avenue extended through from Delaware to Benton to alleviate this traffic flow where we have tractor trailer trucks, delivery trucks, thousands of cars a day. It's even difficult to cross the street. We also have the Island Auto Group down the block from us who parks their cars all over the street. Laconia Avenue has sections where we have no curbs, we have no sidewalks. We have blocks that go from narrow to wide, so two cars can't fit through. And the traffic flow is ridiculous. And we have 4 dead-end streets running off of Laconia Avenue. And Laconia Avenue is the only street that runs parallel to Highland Boulevard. So by opening up from Mason to Benton, extending Mason Avenue from Delaware to Mason, this would alleviate a lot of traffic flow and bring back the community that we had. We knew that when we moved here.
John, we lost it again.
Good evening, Joseph McAllister, President of the South Pacific Association. Again, we're here tonight arguing and fighting for our own quality of life issues. DOT is here tonight to do a presentation, something on Mason Avenue, open up Mason Avenue in front of the hospital. We've been arguing, as Vinny has already stated, we have 2 placards here with pictures and posters, accidents, the cars parking in front of residential homes, Hyundai, Island Auto Group. No concern for the residents in the area whatsoever. We've argued about this with the police, with DOT, do something about the traffic on Laconia Avenue. Nobody's doing anything about it. We have to make it a one-way street. Nothing's being done about it. There's too much of a narrow street on some of the turns, which is dangerous. Road rage, car mirrors being taken off, deliveries with Coca-Cola trucks, Island Auto Group bringing their tractor trailers with their car deliveries. As Vinny has stated, the hospital has grown substantially. They've added, expanded. What about the streets? Right now, we're having an issue on CDU Avenue, the redevelopment, the redesign of CDU Avenue is a total disaster the way they designed that. Right now, we're talking about here, we need capital project done apparently with this Mason Avenue to be open from Delaware Avenue to Benton Avenue, ASAP. We've been working on this since April 25th of 2022 with Debbie Community Leader here in the community board too, to get that a one-way street. Now, apparently that didn't happen. As per the study that DOT does, it's not feasible to do a study because we have to accommodate Island Auto Group because they won't be able to make U-turns on the center walls because they're not open. So, well, we got to accommodate auto groups so they can stay on the phone again. This is our neighborhood, our residents, our community, where DOT is doing a study. It's not working for us. We need this open, Mason Avenue. And if you want to hear about anything that we're opposing, this other project, Mason Avenue, we oppose that totally. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, thank you. I also have Roseanne McAllister that's on, that's speaking, okay. Alex Moran.
Some of you might recognize me from the full board meeting last month. Not often at these meetings, I came out, compelled to come out to daylighting lighting and intersection visibility because felt there were some misconceptions in the discourse around this particular policy. I spoke a little bit about my mom, she's here, her crash from several years ago where she was hit crossing the street, broke her leg in several places. She's really, really lucky to be alive. So, you know, pedestrian safety is a serious issue, and this policy is being considered by the council right now. It has 2 pieces. One is to prohibit parking within 20 feet of a crosswalk, and the other is to mandate physical infrastructure at 1,000 intersections a year to make those intersections safer. And so I'll talk about the first piece of this. This parking ban within 20 feet isn't as black and white as I think it's been made to seem. This is the law in 44 states in the country, including the rest of New York. And the precedent for how this is enforced is that it's enforced based on need. So if you have locations like school, senior centers, where there's an increased risk for the folks who are crossing the street there, or there generally just more folks crossing the street there, then that's a place where the agencies, the city agencies, would apply this treatment. It's not so black and white. And just to give an example of how I think this has been misconstrued a little bit in the political discourse on Staten Island, the borough president did a video about this last week. And the intersection he was at wouldn't even be affected by the law because there's no crosswalk there. And so he's putting out this information that is not true, and he hasn't really looked into the details here. And I'm someone who's personally affected, you know, my family's personally affected. And so we spent a lot of time on this, right? We spent a lot of time on this, making sure we get it. And you know, the second part of this, the 1,000 intersection mandate, really gives communities a way to compel the city to make specific places safer. Because all of a sudden, you can say, hey, you have this quota to meet. Where's our 20 intersections? Right? These are the places where we want you to do this work. And so it gives the communities local control. And so, you know, my recommendation on this issue would be to highlight the places where you want this treatment done and highlight some specific spots. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good.
David Northmore.
I'll be giving the DOT presentation.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. I didn't realize that. All right, so, okay, yeah, please, if you can just introduce yourself.
Yeah. And there's also one person online who's on the theme.
Okay.
Janie Hope. Yeah. But can I start speaking now?
Please.
Okay. So hi everyone, name is Rose. I'm a resident of Community Board 1, but I'm the Staten Island organizer with transportation alternatives. And I've also lived on Staten Island my whole life. I'm a runner, so I'm basically all over the island. I also wanted to speak about daylighting. I think that Alex brought up a lot of salient points. But I also wanted to speak a bit myself. So the topic became important to me back in 2022. Actually back in, near where I am, over in Rosebank in 2022, there was a crash that killed a little girl, less than 2 years old. That was at the intersection of Abbott and Scarborough, which is not it's a small street in a residential area, not one where you'd think a crash would occur. But an SUV was turning at the intersection, crashed into the mother and her little girl, and the views of the SUV were blocked by a van that was parked at the intersection. Everyone did everything right. No one broke the law. But it was still a huge tragedy because of this flaw in street policy in New York City. So right now we have a situation where pedestrians have to walk blindly into the intersection to see if a car is coming. A driver has to approach the intersection blindly to see if there's someone there who they may hit, or to see if there's another car approaching them. This is how a lot of T-bone crashes happen, which are some of the most dangerous car crashes, which also makes this very dangerous for drivers. And daylighting would address this simply by opening up sight lines. Again, this is the reason why it's a law in 44 states. And I also think that with daylighting, you're opening up space that could be used by the community. In those spaces, you can put in anything from planters to green spaces to, like street, small little street murals. And these are spaces that we brought back to the community while you're also making neighborhoods safer. And again, like as Alex stated, it's on an on-need basis. And so if you decide, oh, this is a really dangerous location, we see a lot of crashes happening, and I think that daylighting could really help. That's your opportunity to take charge, and the DOT would have more of an opportunity to help you.
Thank you. You mentioned Janie Ho was online.
Sean,
Yeah.
can you connect with Marie from Borough Hall? She said she wanted,
She's on.
yeah, she wants to speak.
I see it, ready to go. You just call her whenever you're ready.
Right, Marie from Borough Hall, you're up. Right, she's not logged.
She's on,
Okay,
she's on.
can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, sorry, I was muted, it wouldn't come off. So I just wanted to say a few words on behalf of the borough president. So first, I want to make it clear that our office and the borough president are not
Can you hear
against
us?
daylighting. Can you hear me? Hello,
Marie, can you hear us if you could?
can you hear me?
Well, now, Marie, can you hear us now?
Here she is.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I'm not hearing her.
Hello?
Hold on, give me one second.
Make sure you're on.
Yeah. Okay, Marie, you should be able to, can you say something now?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay, so I just wanted to state first that our office, the borough president, we are not against daylighting at all. We have used daylighting many a times. We have requested it at intersections that need it. We just do not want to have something, we just feel that recently everything fits in the same box. You know, Common Core, every child is in the same box and everything, no room for, and we just don't believe in that one size fits all approach. We definitely think that there are intersections that need to be daylighted. We have requested them numerous times over the years. It's just like I said, we just don't want a universal daylighting bill. We want each intersection to be looked at as a case by case basis. That is it, because they're all different, as we know. I mean, just drive around your neighborhood and look at the trajectory of the intersections. Look at the configurations. Everything is not all are the same. Some are perfectly fine and some, do need it. But Staten Island is going to lose roughly 49,000 parking spots. And I think, and DOT from their own projections has said that they think that this bill could have the reverse effect and make the streets more dangerous, that it would increase speed when people are turning because they'd have a more wider room to do it. We just feel that this is not going to solve the problem, that in most cases it could possibly make it worse. So that is all that we are asking for. We just don't want something universal. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Janie Ho, do we have you online? Can we unmute her?
Yes, can you hear me?
Okay. Yep.
Okay, thank you. So hi, I'm Janie Ho, a lifelong Islander, former New York Daily News editor, former waitress at many big restaurants in the CB2 area. Years ago, I was hit by a driver while walking near Toad Hill. It was a hit and run on a left turn, those with more force than the ones going right. I had 5 broken bones. I spent 3 weeks at Staten Island University Hospital. I didn't work for a year. The driver, one of about 200 hit and run drivers that year on Staten Island, moved on. I dealt with pain. I called it teeth chattering, hand quivering pain at times. Bills, recovery alone. I became the face of the Staten Island Advance on the rise of hit and runs, even plastered on the front page, unbeknownst to me that would happen on the front page. Your days of calm wanderings outdoors end abruptly and forever when you get hit. Just asking for sensible implementation This is not drivers versus pedestrians. Everyone is a pedestrian at some point when you step outside of your giant vehicles, Staten Island. A 2-ton vehicle traveling at a Staten Island speed. What is a Staten Island speed? It carries more onus than a 100-pound person. So a simple no upkeep, no power fix, a little visibility at corners, where even people in Facebook groups say inching up without getting clipped would make a big difference, even though they know they're going to get attacked in the Facebook groups. And even aggressive New York drivers say that it could make a difference. This is thousands of people who use these intersections day and night, whipping around turns, as I know, and I've gotten to know, is where people get seriously injured. Specifically for CB2, just a little info, and then I'll be done. 4 out of 5 of the most dangerous intersections for pedestrians in CB2 are within blocks of a school, which naturally bring heavier pedestrian traffic. Kids, grandparents, caretakers. 7 seniors were killed in hits or crashes in CB2 since 2000. And in the 5 years since, in 2020, over 560 crashes with pedestrian injury or death took place in CB2, 560 crashes. That resulted in 13 deaths and 571 injuries. 70% of those crashes and 73% of those injuries or fatalities occurred less than half a mile of a school. And we all know that speed and distraction and other issues are at play, which is why we should mitigate these aspects that we can, that also don't cost upkeep and they don't cost a ticket. Pedestrians are much more likely to get killed or injured, especially those in the CB2 area, but many of those people injured are also drivers. Daylighting will keep drivers safe by preventing T-bone crashes caused by blind turns. So foolproofing our streets with a reasonable measure, sensible implementation is a small accommodation to make so that a 100 to 200-pound person can continue going up against a 2-ton moving vehicle at a normal Staten Island speed, where Staten Island has a long history of lower priority for relatively safe driving. Thank you.
All right, Jay. Thank you very
Yeah.
much. We have to move on. Kevin, you'd like to say something? Maybe, there you go.
Yes, thank you very much. Hi, everybody. My name is Kevin Lachera. I am not a Staten Island resident. Nobody's perfect. I live in Brooklyn, in Greenpoint, and really appreciate the discussion today. One of the reasons why I'm on here is because in my community board, which is Brooklyn Community Board 1 in Greenpoint, was one of the first in the city to have this conversation around daylighting for a number of reasons. And I think one of the most important reasons, and this is relevant to what the borough president's office is talking about, is that so often in our community board, we would have a conversation about an unsafe intersection. Folks would come and they would say, I don't feel safe crossing the street with my children. I don't feel safe going to church. It's really difficult for me to get my groceries home. And these intersections would come to us at the community board. The community would discuss them. They would agree we would need something like a stoplight or a stop sign or an intervention like daylighting. And the Department of Transportation would make us wait, sometimes years, while they studied the problem. They would come back. They would tell us intersections were safe that we knew were unsafe. Right. And it was a way, the conversation around universal daylighting is a conversation about reclaiming our power as communities. Right. The ask around universality is because though some intersections may be safer than others, every intersection in the city, every intersection on Staten Island, every intersection in your community board can become unsafe in an instant. And that instant can cost someone their life. Right. And I think we've all been behind the wheel of a car, having to inch out for visibility's sake. We've all had to cross the street. And, you know, we know some of those intersections, but again, it can be any intersection. And I think that part of this idea around universality is to hold the Department of Transportation to account. I also think something that is very important to note about this study that the Department of Transportation has put out, and I say this as somebody who has helped 23 community boards through this conversation since 2023. The conclusions that have been reached in this study have not been reached in any of the 44 states that have passed universal daylighting, has not been reached by any other municipality. And a lot of statisticians have really cast a lot of doubt on the conclusions that were present in that study. I'm happy to talk more about that, but I think it's really critical and important that we trust our experiences at intersections. Thank you so much. Sorry about that. over one individual study, right? We all deserve to be safe, whether we're driving, walking, cycling. And I really appreciate your time and consideration on this.
Thank you, Kevin, and we're right on schedule, so we will move on to the next agenda item. David, going to present, before we give you the floor, we have a number of stakeholders. We have Roseanne and Victoria from the DOT, we have Niles from Staten Island Hospital, Michael from the council office. So there are plenty of participants in this discussion to have very, very balanced review of what's being presented. So David, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm sharing this screen.
I don't see it.
Boxes.
I don't see it. Give me 1 second. I got it. Yeah.
Good evening. My name is David Dorsworth, Project Manager with the New York State Department of Transportation. And I'm here to talk to you today about Mason Avenue project that we're planning on implementing on Delaware Avenue and Seaview Avenue. Project includes pedestrian facilities, new bicycle facilities, station motor vehicle lanes, and changes to parking. I just want to run through the whole project with you. Blocks that we're talking about are between Seaview and Delaware Avenue. This is about 4 blocks and 0.2 miles. The hospital is located entirely on the east side of the street. Mason Avenue, as we've discussed before, in the meeting, ends at Delaware Avenue. Why is the New York City Department of Transportation working here? Well, we've had requests for improvements, safety improvements, to Mason Avenue down vicinity. New York City DOT sees this as a traffic safety priority. And we also want to further our goals in terms of increasing cycling in the city. In terms of requests for improvements, the hospital has come to New York City DOT and other community stakeholders requesting safety improvements on Seaview Avenue. And as part of that project in 2024, we have been looking at Mason Avenue, but we split the project off in order to keep Seaview on time. During the outreach, when we were talking to the community board, we received a request to do some work on Mason Avenue as well. And the hospital has also expressed interest in continuing our work on Mason Avenue to help pedestrians there. New York City DOT safety goals is the Visit Zero program. It's run through the Visit Zero program, in which we basically believe that every person in the city deserves to be able to get around without getting killed or severely injured. And so, low goals as far as I'm concerned, but it's a lot of work, and we believe it's achievable through a data-driven process and through better street design. The way we determine which street is dangerous is through measuring the KSI of a street, the pedestrian KSI. KSI is the number of people that are killed or severely injured, either by mile or in areas. And we break down these geographies into intersection, corridors, and zones. So these are the top places. These represent 50% of all the pedestrian KSIs, either in the corridor, zone, or the intersection. And Mason Avenue falls with one of these zones. In terms of cycling, the New York City Department of Transportation has been expanding the bicycle network for some time now on Staten Island. Our goal is to increase safety for cyclists, but also to provide an option for people to get around that's efficient and healthy. And where we've been building bike lanes, this is a map of mode share for travel activity around Staten Island. Where we build bike lanes, you can see, there's a darker amount, there's a darker color. And that's because more people are riding. So where we build bike lanes, more people do ride bikes. And cycling is one of the fastest growing mode shares on Staten Island at about 50%. Vehicle modes, about 1%, but that's mainly because most of the roads are built out, in fact, almost all of them are built out, except for obviously Mason, as we discussed. And there's not gonna be much growth there, but cycling is going up, and it's increased by 42 times the amount that vehicles have, for example. We also use bike lane projects as safety projects to assist all users of the road. And an example of these is Clove Road and Targee Street in Yorkshire at Staten Island, in which after we added bicycle lanes, they were delisted from our Vision Zero priority corridor. And then we've also done work in Staten Island CB2. Here's New York Lane and Mill Road. We saw a 39% reduction in the number of injuries after we installed our project. The old Seaview Avenue project saw a 40% drop. This was the one before last year's project. And on Jefferson Street, Mill Road, and Guyan Avenue, we saw a 51% drop in injuries. While we're doing a bike lane project, it helps everyone out. And so the community and the hospital have been requesting safety improvements to streets like Mason Avenue. Mason Avenue is in an area with the highest number of people, pedestrians killed or severely injured on Staten Island. And we use bicycle projects to help everyone for safety and getting around efficiently in a healthy form. Mason Avenue today has missing several important safety features. It lacks safe and convenient pedestrian crossings. It has no bicycle lanes or other infrastructure, and is unnecessarily wide for the volume that it carries. In terms of pedestrian crossings, this is a map of people going to the hospital, walking to the hospital. The darker the blue, the more people are walking on that road to get to the hospital. If you look at the bottom of the screen, you can see that we have an existing crosswalk across Mason Avenue at Seaview Avenue. To the north of that, we do not. And we have the main entrance to the hospital on Mason Avenue at the northern end. Pretty much 73% of the people who are walking to the hospital have to go out of their way to get to a crosswalk. And going out of your way can end up being an 11-minute walk, which for people who are going to the hospital in general, is probably not the best option for that. And so a lot of people are going to end up crossing the street in the middle of the road without a protection, without a crosswalk, without a stop sign, without signal, and that creates a danger. In terms of cycling volume, EOT is getting better and better at tracking where cyclists are riding. In the olden days, we used to just go out and ask people where they ride. We're getting better and better data that shows us actually where the cyclists are riding. And this is an example of Strava data. Strava is a fitness app that allows cyclists to track their rides. And they in turn count the number of riders on each and every street in Staten Island. And they should give that data to us so that we can see where the top cycling routes are. The orange line there represents the top 15% of cycling routes in the Staten Island CB2. It's a route on Mason Avenue, Laconia, through Quintard, Olympia Boulevard, and Slater Boulevard. It links Midland Beach, Ocean Breeze, and South Beach. We confirmed these numbers with spot counts. In 2022, we spotted about 105 cyclists during a 14-hour inspection on the weekend. Cycling is also growing on Mason Avenue. Since 2019, volumes of cyclists have doubled. And this exceeds now the number of cyclists that rode during the pandemic. Pandemic saw a bit of a bike boom in the city. Numbers exploded as people got out, rode bikes to get out of lockdown. But we don't have any bicycle lanes on this section of Mason Avenue. The bicycle lanes end at Seaview Avenue, and so we don't have safe infrastructure for the cyclists there. And then there's the width of the road itself. Mason Avenue is approximately 90 feet wide. It has 2 to 3 southbound travel lanes and very long crossings, essentially, for pedestrians. In terms of motor vehicle volume, it is not a particularly high volume street. You can see on Highland and Father Capodanno, this is a map of the average traffic that's going down these streets per day. Highland has about 38,000 vehicles, or rather 39,000 vehicles. Father Capodanno has 19,000 vehicles. On Seaview by Highland Boulevard, we have about 8,000 vehicles. On Mason Avenue, we have about 7,000. So it's more of a collector street that feeds into the greater network. It connects the parking lots and the local streets to the wider area. And if you want to look at this on the ground level, Mason Avenue here, looking north at Garrettson Avenue. Again, we have 4 travel lanes, 3 southbound, 1 northbound, 90 feet wide street. It carries 415 vehicles per hour going south at the peak. You compare this to Highland Boulevard, which is 70 feet wide. It carries 1,700 vehicles per hour in its peak direction, and that's 417 times the number of vehicles as Mason Avenue. And it only has 2 travel lanes in each direction. And then we go down to an even smaller street just for reference, and this is Seaview Avenue west of Highland Boulevard. This street is 30 feet wide and it has 462 vehicles per hour heading westbound, westbound, sorry for the correct direction. And the traffic volume here is about 111 times peak direction for Mason Avenue, just to give you a comparison of what's happening in the surrounding area. So nearby streets like Highland Boulevard carry almost 4 times the amount of traffic that's on Mason Avenue, and yet are smaller and have less travel lane, or have about the same travel lanes. Or you look at a street like Seaview Avenue, which is west of Highland Boulevard, it has 2.7 times the volume as that street, but 4 times the number of travel lanes. So a lot of space, a lot of capacity that isn't necessarily needed. There's issues that come up when you have very wide streets, high frequency of speeding, dangerous weaving movements across lanes. More importantly, for the pedestrians, there's more exposure for pedestrians crossing the motor vehicle traffic, and you have higher turning rates as people are allowed to make softer turns across into side streets and such, and they strike pedestrians at much higher speed, at a higher pace. There is little vehicle growth on Mason Avenue for long-term thinking. Its peak was actually, according to our records, back in 2019. There was a massive drop off, as obviously during COVID. It started to come back, but it's still down from where it was in 2019, and it's leveling off now. So currently on Mason Avenue, the majority of the pedestrians heading to the hospital lack a safe and convenient crossing point on Mason Avenue. One of the community's primary cycling routes lacks any bicycle infrastructure. And Mason Avenue is exceedingly wide, creates conditions for unsafe driving, which negatively impacts all users of the road. The DOT has a series of toolkits that we can use in this situation to create a safer street for everyone. We want to create safer and more convenient crossings for pedestrians getting to the hospital, add new bicycle facilities on an important cycling route, and calm traffic to create a safer street for all users. One of those approaches would be a crosswalk with always stop signs. These are traffic controls that allow all pedestrians to cross the street by slowing down the vehicles. Vehicles must come to a stop. It gives time to pedestrians to get across, and it makes so that when the vehicles are actually moving to the intersection, they're moving at a slower time, giving pedestrians a chance to cross the street. We would be adding a new always stop with crosswalks at Alter Avenue, right by the hospital entrances and right in that area where all the pedestrian traffic is coming from. We also want to reduce the distances that pedestrians have to cross on streets. So we'd be adding new pedestrian islands at the Alter Avenue intersection along with the new crosswalk and stop signs. And we would also add an additional new island at the Seaview Avenue intersection. We would employ a road diet. A road diet is removing travel lanes or narrowing their width in order to create a safer environment. And so when we've employed them in the past, we've seen declines in pedestrian injuries and fatalities, KSI, by 31%, 32%. All users by about 30%, seniors by 35%, and motor vehicle occupancy by 34%. Sorry, that word. So the road diet will be occurring between Seaview Avenue and Delaware Avenue. We'll be taking the travel lanes down to 1 in each direction, and the narrow lanes, the remaining lanes would stay in standard width, And then at Seaview Avenue, on the southbound approach, we currently have 3 travel lanes, a left turn only, a through only, and a right turn only. We would be converging the right turn only and through only lanes into 1 lane, and we would maintain the left turn lane. We would also be adding protected bike lanes. Protected bike lanes are often seen as beneficial for just cyclists, but they have benefits for all users. When we deploy them in their past projects, we've seen a drop in the number of people killed and severely injured by 29%. Motor vehicle occupants by 13%, senior pedestrians by 39%. With significant gains for all users, not just cyclists. We've been employing protected bicycle lanes between Seaview Avenue and Delaware Avenue. That would extend the existing network out and cover that area where the cyclists are riding. And we would also be adding turn common with daylighting. You know, we're talking about daylighting right now. I just want to give you an example of why the DOT is not fully on board with adding with the laws being passed or proposed rather. If you look at this intersection, this is a properly daylit and traffic calm intersection. We're using rubber speed bumps, delineator. We're using items that slow vehicles down as they go around the corner. That slowing vehicles down gives time for vehicles to see what's happening on the street, see pedestrians in the crosswalk, and make decisions before it's too late. But when we employ measures like this in the past, we've seen a drop of 32.7 ASI for pedestrians, 60% for senior citizens, and 60% for all users. You're slowing the turns, giving people more time to make decisions. We'll be adding daylighting on several intersections along Mason Avenue. Some intersections already have daylighting. In fact, several do already, and we won't need to be adding any more, but we'll bring them up to the current standard. And then, because we're adding protected bicycle lanes against the curb line, we currently have an EV charging station for vehicles along the south side of Mason Avenue at Seaview Avenue. We're currently looking at relocating this. We will be removing this for this project. We'll look for another location on Mason Avenue to reinstall this. The parking is currently EV only at these locations. We're reclaiming these for general use. And then in terms of parking changes, there'll be a bit, because of this, a net increase of about 4 general use parking spaces along the corridor. We're removing 6 parking spaces for the daylighting. We had found some space where we could add some parking back, so we're adding 6 parking spaces back. So we get a net even loss in terms of parking, no parking loss overall. And those new parking spots are closer to the hospital, so that's beneficial to the public as well. So long presentation for the end. Summary of the changes: new crosswalk with all-way stop at Alter Avenue. Pedestrian islands added to Seaview Avenue at the Alter Avenue intersection. Parking protected bike lanes in both directions. Reduced number of travel lanes to 1 in each direction. Existing travel lanes are reduced to standard width. The southbound right only and through only lanes at Seaview Avenue have been merged into 1 right through lane. The EV chargers at Seaview Avenue are being removed, and there's a net gain of 4 parking spaces for general use, approximately 6 lots for daylighting, and then 6 additional ones added by the hospital with the EV chargers being updated. Project benefits is we'll have a new, safe, convenient pedestrian crossing for the hospital traffic. We'll have protected bicycle lanes on an important route. We'll have common traffic on a local collector road that serves the community. And we'll have additional parking outside of the hospital. And with that, that's the presentation. And I don't know if you want.
Yeah, thank you, David. Well, before I open the floor for discussions, I'd also like to hear from the hospital, our council delegation, also from Roseanne and Victoria. What we hear from our constituents is that, you know, no one is going to object to measures to improve pedestrian safety. And what Joe was mentioning earlier, you know, there is growing concern in areas that have now sort of expanded beyond the capacity of the original design. However, the objections that we receive are not based on the need, but based on the solution. And that's where perhaps we could use additional clarification. And just one item that was brought to our attention. I'm a cyclist. I appreciate having access to bike lanes, but you also have to look at the utilitarian argument. You know, one of the slides mentioned that over the course of a 14-hour period, there was a count of roughly 77 cyclists. And your vehicular numbers correspond with the national average. There was one stat, and we're not urban planners, so we really don't understand the science of road design. We really depend on experts for guidance, but we do pull data. And the average active suburban roadway sees roughly 106 vehicles every 15 minutes. And just makes sense. If you counted 60 seconds, it's not unreasonable to see 8 to 10 vehicles, pass by. Over that 14-hour period, you multiply 106 by 4 by 14, that's 5,936 vehicles that are now being inconvenienced to give right of way to 77 cyclists. So, just looking at it from that utilitarian standpoint, is there a way to slow traffic without compressing 2 lanes of traffic down to 1? If that's going to create congestion, that's going to impede access to vital institution like a hospital. That's where we see objection. But since we don't understand the science of road design, we're just not equipped to offer an explanation when we receive an objection. So that sort of sets the floor. And if perhaps Niles, Michael, if there's anything that you can add to those points, I'd like to also have Roseanne and Victoria speak to it. So Niles.
Will Dutriell is also here from CB, from my office.
Pleasure.
And Donna Manita, just want to recognize her.
Hey, what's up? Work at the hospital. As Mr. D'Angelo pointed out, the hospital's growing, and it's probably only going to increase to grow as the needs behind them. Particularly on the North Shore, we have and that's growing too, but North Shore the concentration of there as well too. And we've had our pointed out, unfortunately got by accident. We've had our own staff members get hit one across the area as well, and as you know, a lot of employees are in the streets that are walking to traverse, matching up with the DOT numbers and everything. And for us, it's a huge safety issue for it, and having control and obviously the speed and crosswalk is a huge thing for us. You don't need to be an urban planner. You could just stand there. It's a high area, as we all agree, and for us, safety and pedestrian things that are going to try to speeding or anything. And CB does have a lot of entrances as well too, but I guess it's on the back end of Mason Avenue, so we're not aware of the parts of the land, and through there, like we're still like non-emergency and a lot of that's why I go through there. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions for as well too. But that's basically
Just trying to understand. So we have gone from 3 lines each direction to 1 line.
Yeah, that's right. It's 3 lanes, sorry, 3 lanes southbound, and then 1 lane northbound, and it will go to 1 lane in each direction. Similar to the way the Mason is south.
I know you brought Highland as example. So there is more traffic and definitely a lot more traffic than on Mason Avenue. But did you try to drive Highland between 2.5 to 5, 5.5? Just to get a mile, it could take an hour. It's terrible. So the 2 lines, everybody coming from work trying to fit. And just, you need to be careful, and it's okay, but pedestrian safety is very important, but not completely to narrow it like it happened on Seaview Avenue. Driving Seaview now, whoever knew trying to understand how to fit into this line when there is a parking, bike line, and there is one narrow line to drive from Highland to Copeland.
Do you travel on CB already?
It's, took me a while to get used, and I'm still trying to get used to one line. I'm not saying there is a traffic, but I was saying there is traffic, but it's urgently to get to the hospital, an entrance of the hospital is from CU, emergency room is from CU. Somebody will be on the way, there is no way to bypass.
Yeah, and we understand that, know people are concerned about it. One of the things in the big change in terms of road design is a lot different than a typical Staten Island. It does take time to, for people to get used to it. I pay attention to the car economy, project and the project as well. I pay attention to the car economy and data coming out of it. People do voice concerns about, changing the lane, they don't really understand it. We do caution people that it does take some time, and as people are using more and more, they do gotta get used to it. And if there's issues and things that are happening on CVU, and people would like to let us know about it, we're happy to hear it, and look into possible maybe kind of improvements along the roadway. Not really like a one and done type of outfit. We're always looking at the street. So we can take a look if there's any.
Okay, yeah, so that big piece, yeah, Diane.
I had two questions. One, is there a reason we can't put 90-degree parking in on the opposite side of the street too?
Yes, yeah, 90-degree parking requires a lot of space, in order to work. There's also a lot of driveways on the other side of the street, just fire hydrants and things like that. If you don't get, we actually looked at adding 90-degree on both sides, you just don't get as much parking as you think you would get, just for all those factors. But on the south side, the reason why the south side does have all the 90-degree parking, because there's almost nothing there. There's like, I think, 2 fire hydrants and a driveway, and it's clean besides that.
And my other question is Delaware Avenue, at the point where it pinches, where Mason turns the left onto Delaware. It's a pinch point and the road actually gets much smaller there.
Yeah.
And there's no, for some reason on that side of the road on Delaware, there are no sidewalks. So you have a pinch point with cars coming in both directions, a food truck. And people, that's where all the pedestrians are in the street because it's crazy. The street gets narrower there, but the pedestrians are forced into the street due to the lack of sidewalks. So can we do something, address that issue?
Yeah, so we looked at Delaware. Delaware, for folks that don't know, it's the top end of the street. And like you say, it does narrow down. The issue with Delaware is there's actually no sidewalks on Delaware. Like if you go past, there's like somebody nicely put out a little path next to their house, but then once you get past them, there's no sidewalks past there. So pedestrians don't actually have a space at all. We looked at Delaware in terms of making some kind of improvements. It's difficult to do from an operational standpoint. From what we do, we usually would need like some kind of capital investment. We need like a big rebuilding of the road. Recently, the Staten Island Borough Commissioner's Office managed to help MTA get a turnaround. That was a lift I've never seen in the DOT. That's a big lift. We are trying to do it. For the project, this project, we are hoping, and we're gonna keep monitoring after it goes in, that the Alter Avenue intersection will look more inviting to people. And because a lot of people are coming down Delaware from elsewhere, so hopefully they will keep walking until they get to Alter on Laconia or on Highland.
Well, I think it looks like most of the people that you see on the street are hospital employees. I think they're parking all the way down there and they're walking there to their cars.
Yeah, and we're hoping that a lot of that traffic moves to the Alter Avenue because they'll have like the control. And then in terms of Delaware's tightness, you can always look at some kind of improvements in the future. I can't promise you like an immediate solution, but for making adjustments to alter Delaware, because Delaware wasn't built out, like much of Mason wasn't built out, that section that's still undeveloped.
But that is a good point that you brought up. One of the things I wanted to mention, I'm DOT Borough Commissioner, I was in Carolina, for those of you that know. One of the things that we did was, the buses were making the turnaround on Delaware. And I actually sat there at 7 a.m. and they almost hit my car because they weren't going to the end like they were supposed to go to. They were whipping a turn by Alter Avenue. And as you said, people are coming down from Delaware, they're parking, and I had to literally cover my eyes on several occasions, because I said, oh my God, this person's gonna get killed. So that was how I worked so hard to get sanitation. It's city property back there, but it's not their property, but I worked really hard to get them to clear that lot. Because if you remember years ago, that's where the buses were doing the turnaround. So we cleared the lot, we resurfaced the lot, so now the buses are no longer gonna be doing that on the street, which is was a major safety issue for me. They weren't even looking, they were just turning, and it was very dangerous. What we're trying to do now is, what we're seeing is that people are parking there illegally. So we put the no standing anytime, buses only. I've spoken to the 122 precinct to try to enforce that more, because they shouldn't be parking there. I just like the fact that the buses are now, they're laying over there. So before, they were laying over on Mason Avenue, taking up like 4 parking spaces. So now they're laying over back there. We got them off the street. They're doing the turnaround, and it's a lot safer. It's a lot safer that they've done that. But I do agree with you on Delaware. So we're going to continue to look at that. I do agree with you. Sidewalks is always an issue. Just to explain with the sidewalks, many times it's not city property. It might be belong to the Parks Department, or it might belong to the state. It might be part of a green belt. It might not be city owned. So we can't go in there and just build a sidewalk. Other than that, really important is that there's tree restitution charges. So even if we wanted to build a sidewalk and it's Parks property and they give us permission, the restitution cost for taking down a tree, I had a property where it was gonna cost them $700,000 to remove 3 trees to build a sidewalk. And he asked us, he said, listen, I only paid $550,000 for my house. But we wanted him, this is just an example, when we get these builders pavement plans, we get the waivers, so anybody that wants to waive from the required measures that they have to take when they apply for C of O, the waivers come to us. And we had a waiver. We wanted them to put a sidewalk in, because my belief is, if you're building a house, you're fixing a house, put a sidewalk in, and that's how we're gonna get these sidewalks. So they asked for a waiver, and I said, no, we're gonna deny the waiver, build the sidewalk. And then they came back and said, can you reconsider? Because we have to remove 3 trees, and Parks was gonna charge him $730,000 to remove 3 trees from his property. So how can I not waive this man's tree? I had to, but that would have been a sidewalk, just so that you know that we're up against the wall with these things, you know, so. But that's what we're up against with having sidewalks.
Joe? I mean, you see that they did a huge study of all the streets in the whole area, where all the vehicles going by. What happened to Laconia Avenue, the main street that takes the cars to Delaware Avenue to Mason Avenue? What happened to that study?
So I'm gonna, Joe, I've talked to you about this on so many different occasions. We looked at Laconia Avenue, and what our borough engineer said was that if we were to make that a one-way going each direction, anyone coming down from, if you live on one block and it's one way going this way, in order to get to your house, you'd have to go all the way around to come down Laconia to get to your house. Right now, the access is even, it's like sort of like a grid, okay? So if you're gonna make Mason Avenue, say going one way towards, I don't know, towards,
North.
right, okay, for example. So if you live here and and you're coming down Highland Boulevard, okay? You're gonna have to go all the way around to come down to get to your house. So right now, instead of coming down the street the way you are doing it now, it's gonna create a problem on Highland Boulevard to come around. We put the central line in, which I think improves safety tremendously. We did the study in 2023, and our borough engineers felt it would create a negative impact on access going to the side streets along Laconia. Now, I will restudy that, you know, give me at least until 2026, it's 3 years, we'll reopen the study. But that was the results. So what we did was we daylighted some of the corners, we put the center line in, which I know helped tremendously because there was never even a center line. So we can go back and study again when it's 3 years for next year. And then hopefully maybe they'll go back.
3 years from next year, so we're talking about 20.
No, 3 years next year from the last study. I just said we studied in 2023, Joe. 3 years and 26.
So this is still a study. What happened to the vehicles on Laconia Avenue? Where's the numbers? Where's the numbers?
The numbers, you're talking about the total number of vehicles is what caused us to deny the one-way conversion. So right now, there's a circulation issue. We've been down this road. It's a circulation issue. We can study it again next year. It's 3 years since the previous study.
What happened to a regular, simple, normal bike car share lane, like you showed in the other photos of the cars in the bike?
What, for
Why
Laconia?
couldn't they do that? I'm talking about Mason Avenue, Seaview Avenue. Why couldn't they do that on Seaview Avenue and Mason Avenue? Why do you want to take away, you want to destroy Mason Avenue? You're saying you can't put annual parking. So you're gonna take another disaster like you got Seaview with the bike lane.
Let me just say, you know, you keep saying disaster. It is something, it's something that has to
I
be,
have not seen one bike on Seaview Avenue.
okay.
And there's been people that are now civic in our community that said the same thing. That's why I want to know, the guy that you have in the picture that's on Seaview Avenue, did you get consent from him or did you pay him? How did you get a picture of that one
So
person
you said we
on a
paid,
bike?
is that you thinking we
I'm
did?
asking you, did you pay him? Did you get consent? Because
All
this.
right, guys, we kind of have to move on with the agenda. I just want to give the floor to our chairman.
I just,
But can he just address this one question?
just quickly, come on.
We can
Address this?
take a look at what's on the avenue again. We'll take a. I really would appreciate it, because this is really disgusting that we gotta go through this. Everything's being done in the whole community, but Laconia Avenue, the main problem.
I said we
cars all day long, back and forth, in cars, bumping accidents, and it doesn't stop.
We said we'll take
25 years I've
a,
been with the Civic in South Beach. I've never seen such a disaster in my whole entire life.
okay, you're raising your voice, and what
I'm
I'm
sorry.
telling you is that
I'm
we've been
really
very,
aggravated.
we have been very helpful to your civic. We've been to your meetings, we've done everything you've needed us to do, because you didn't get the answer you wanted on Laconia, doesn't mean that we're ignoring you. What we're saying is, Joe, I will look at it again next year in January, okay? I'm telling you, we'll look at it again.
Thank
Okay, that's what I'm telling you.
Fred?
I gotta make a comment about Seaview Avenue also. I challenge any one person in this room to try and enter and leave the emergency room. You have that brush that's growing up there. You cannot see what's coming at you, especially at nighttime. And if anybody from DOT wants to meet me there at nighttime, I will be there. Because you can't, because when you're pulling out, you got the bike lane, you got the parked cars. You're halfway in the middle of the street before you can see what's coming at you.
Is it the?
This is the emergency room.
It's the entrance, like coming out of the.
If you were coming down off Island Boulevard, you would have to make the left into the emergency room. And if you were leaving the emergency room, because I had to do this experience, that's right, you would have to make the right to go to heaven. You can't see what's coming at you. It's dark, number one. And number two, picture this, here's the street, you got the bike lane, right? Then you got the parked cars, and then you got the travel lane. So I'm leaving here. I gotta look out for the bicycles that are never there. I got parked cars in the way, and now I'm halfway out, and see what the hell's coming up. I mean, you can't see it.
Could you tell me, after the meeting, could you just tell me what intersection, like the.
Yeah, sure, maybe after me, no problem. Let's move along.
Okay, so moving to the next subject, and just to frame this so we can actually get through this productively and efficiently. The public session was just heavily, skewed toward the universal daylighting bill. And what we've collected from incoming concerns basically is demonstrating a lack of understanding of how this legislation is crafted and how it would be implemented. Because those who object, the point that Marie had made earlier during the public session for all, is that there is some who see this as a one-size-fits-all implementation, where any crosswalk, any intersection that's marked with a crosswalk would actually face such restrictions, which would mean, as she had outlined, 49,000 parking spots that would be eliminated. So on that end of the spectrum, there is the fear that the imposition of this legislation is going to create more inconvenience than benefit. On the other side, there's also a lack of understanding, and what Alex had helped us really focus upon is that in the absence of strict mandates, there would not be any follow through, and the legislation is crafted in such a way where the communities would have control to determine which intersections you would benefit from the universal daylighting mandate. That being said, we're not quite sure. what oftentimes happens is we either object or support a piece of legislation, and once it's passed and implemented, we learn that the outcome is very different than what we initially believed it to be. So, perhaps if the DOT can speak a little bit about what this means, what control would we have either in the absence of legislation, or if in fact it is passed, now how much control would we have over determining where it makes sense and where it doesn't?
Yeah, Joe, I just want to mention that I didn't come prepared to talk about daylighting, so I don't want, all I can say is that in general, aspect. I understand both arguments. The daylighting bill would force the DOT to install a certain number of, daylighting spots throughout the city.
Are there exclusions? Is there
Again, I'm not prepared to talk about that because I have not been involved in that bill.
Okay.
So if I had known, I would have brought somebody from the team that would have been able to speak about that.
And also,
I just want to mention too, also, our position is that we have not, we utilize daylighting in a lot of our safety measures. It creates visibility, it addresses visibility problems. It opens a space for people to look. One of the issues we have is without the physical barriers in those daylighting spaces, when you're just opening up with markings, people do tend to go faster.
Right.
And we've had some studies which show that they're turning faster without the physical vertical elements in that actual location, right? So that's an issue. We don't want to encourage fast turns because 9 out of 10 pedestrians that are struck and killed are from turning movements. So that was the issue we had with that. We actually saw that some of the daylighting measures that we had employed actually increased speeding as they were turning. So, and that's why we don't want this sort of cookie cutter bill. We don't want to be able to say, okay, we have to meet our standards, so we're going to put one here, 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 and here. Even though we don't think it's going to work, but we have to meet our mandate. So what we want to be able to do is have the autonomy to have our engineers go out there and look at the location, say, yes, we need daylighting. And you know what? Maybe we'll put some vertical elements here. Maybe we'll put some stanchions here. Maybe we'll put some quick curb here so that it physically prevents people and it slows them down. That's the problem.
But we need
Turning kills.
a level of reassurance, because those who are expressing concern feel as though corrective action isn't taken swiftly enough. And again, I don't have the point of reference.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, we have, our tracking system allows us a certain deadline. So when we get a request for daylighting, it's usually 12 weeks. We have to respond back. If that doesn't happen, for anybody here that requested that, please call me and let me know. But one thing that we do is we track our responses. So if you request daylighting at a corner, you say to me, it's dangerous. I can't see the corner. Now, hedges, overgrowth, that's something completely different. That's the people that own that property should be able to trim back their hedges. That has nothing to do with us. But again, if you have a location, we want to look at it, but we just want to be able to say this location is not safe to put the daylighting. Maybe there's some other kind of measure we can put here, but we don't want to be required to do that.
But David touched on that during his presentation, that, it is possible that could accelerate the rate of speed.
Yes.
For a turn.
And turning movements is where most people are being killed on the streets, is when people are making turns. That's,
But that being said, and since we wanted to have an open discussion, and Alex gave some thoughtful contributions
yes,
during the
I
public
appreciate
session.
you sharing your story.
And if perhaps you can speak to, why those who are in support of this legislation feel as though that corrective action hasn't been taken, and we require something as far reaching as the universal daylighting bill to actually impose measures that you feel should have been taken already.
Yeah, I'm happy about it, and I mentioned I've done a lot of work on this issue. So procedurally, the legislation requires agency rulemaking, and the relevant agencies here are DOT and NYPD. And the precedent for this law, right, and this is the law literally in the entire country, but we have a great case study in San Francisco where they changed their law in 2023, and the way the agencies implemented it is based on need and based on the rate that they could add infrastructure to the street, right? So they focused on schools. And in the first 18 months after the law was changed, they improved safety around all the schools in the city, right? It took 18 months to do that. And so this idea that it is a cookie cutter, I personally don't share that view because the way that this historically is done, the precedent here is that it's not a cookie cutter, it's at the discretion of the agencies, and then in collaboration with the communities and the community boards, you can then go to the agencies and say, this is how we would like this implemented, and council members likewise can do that as well. I'll also add, I've done a lot of work on this, I can speak about it at.
You guys just call them.
I'll try to keep it brief. I have been involved with discussions with folks higher up at DOT and council leadership. And my understanding of DOT's concern is that it really has to do with having the money in the agency budget to hit the mandate, because otherwise the council members will.
And now Marie from Borough Hall would like to actually express point of view from Borough Hall in response to an observation that I made as to whether or not the public who are in support of this legislation have faith that action is being taken. So Marie, perhaps you can speak a little bit about that.
Can you hear me?
You're breaking up a little.
Can you hear me? Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
That sounds like a Verizon commercial. So I just wanted to say, number one, for those of you who know me, who have no better than you, I've worked.
We can't hear you again.
You're breaking up. I don't know if you're in a good area, but you're breaking up heavy.
Maybe we can get you on the phone. Would you mind if we called you and we put you on speakerphone?
Now,
Marie, try turning your video off.
All right, we can hear you.
Hold the phone up.
Yep.
Okay, thank you,
Thank you.
thank you, Marie. All right, so I guess.
Okay, so what I'm going to do here is, we're going to take two votes from board members. And this is basically to vote on the recommendation that is going to be presented, at the general board meeting. So just in the interest of cadence here, we'll vote on, the universal daylighting bill as to whether we approve the support for the passage of that bill, or if we oppose. Of course, there's also abstain.
Can
Uh,
I just say one thing?
Oh,
yeah, very quick.
Real quick, Joe.
I just want to say,
We gotta get
I
out.
apologize, all due respect to the board, if I was loud, especially to Roseanne, all due respect, I apologize if I was loud. Just wanted to say.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. Okay, so, first up, Sean Abraham.
Reject, I'm disapproving.
Okay, Mark Alvarez.
Reject.
Diane McNamara.
Oppose.
I oppose. Fred Ginter.
Okay. What's
Okay, quick. And now going back to the Department of Transportation's proposed street improvement project on Mason Avenue. Sean Abraham.
Approve.
Mark Alvarez.
Sorry.
This is for
Mason Avenue?
Mason Avenue.
To do what?
The presentation that David had made regarding the redesign of Mason Avenue.
Approve.
Okay, Diane McNamara. Approve.
Me.
Okay, all right, unanimous. All right, so just moving on, anyone have old business? New business? All right, so we're finishing 7 minutes beforehand, meeting adjourned.
Thank you.